Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this workshop on understanding matrescence, navigating the psychological shift as a new mum. I'm Dr. Shoma Chakravarti, and I will be leading you through this workshop. This workshop comes to you as a part of the return to work journey. So, wherever you may be in the transition as a new mum, maybe you're just considering going back to work, or maybe your maternity leave is almost ending. Use this workshop as a way to garner some ideas, some strips, some strategies to put together a plan. I'm Dr. Shoma Chakravarti. I'm a psychology faculty and a therapist. I have a private practice and I work with individuals every single day as they navigate through emotional challenges, life course challenges. And I believe in the skill of being ready, in the notion of being intentional about the lives that we want to lead and create for ourselves. In this workshop, we will be talking a little bit about what is matrescence, how come we don't hear about the word matrescence as much when we talk of new moms. We will be looking at how what we've actually thought of as birth and becoming a mother is not one change, but it's actually a gateway to many, many changes that moms and also new parents in general sort of experience. We will also look at how to navigate this in terms of emotions, in terms of physicality, in terms of logistics, in terms of understanding that whatever we may be feeling, there is a basis to that, even if that's not being understood or reflected in how the world is behaving with us. And of course, we look at what we can do to buffer ourselves and sort of support ourselves through this time. What do we need to cope with this phase of matrescence? I would, of course, say to you that please feel free to take this information on an as needed basis. Nothing that we are saying here in this workshop is a right or wrong way, step, sure shot plans. We are not trying to be picture perfect, 100% ready. Matrescence is a phase. All of us already come with what we need to navigate this transition internally. The templates, of course, exist in the body. But we're just going to take this time to pause, notice what's coming up for ourselves, what we may be needing, and matching that with the life that's to come. So, first of all, we'll be looking a little bit at what matrescence is actually about. So, first of all, let's take a look at the term matrescence and what it's actually about. Right. So, matrescence as a term, of course, has been around for a long time, but you rarely ever have heard of it, mostly because I think there wasn't so much emphasis on mothers' internal experiences of birth, pregnancy, motherhood, etc. And I think there was a lot of emphasis on how you were supposed to feel. So very often, I think when moms have come up and said, I'm having debilitating anxiety, or I'm finding this difficult, or I miss my old life, I think these opinions will not maybe considered very seriously because these are not the parts that are easy to understand and validate. And that's a big thing about matrescence. A large part of this journey is not going to be easily understood by others, but that doesn't stop it from being very, very real to you. Matrescence is basically accumulation of changes that occur for the mom, not limited just to the birth, but starting off before and going on for much further than the initial weeks and days of the birth and the period around the postpartum phase. In fact, I think becoming a mother is a series of invisible changes that only the person undergoing them knows. It's a change of their essential social life, emotional life, physically, how they feel, what their body feels like, their partnership. And it's a coalescing or accumulation of all these changes on different domains of their life, both internal and external, that actually becomes the basis of who they are as a mom. So it's also a personal becoming, but it's also a universal becoming because everyone has gone through this phase, whether or not they knew the term matrescence. The components, of course, are various. At the body level, there are severely intense hormonal changes. So anyone who's breastfeeding is aware of what a toll it takes on the body. It's like you've been gymming non-stop, literally. Similarly, if you look at the identity, someone who has worked, studied, led teams, run companies, suddenly may feel reduced in a way. And you may feel like you've lost access to your old identity because now who am I? I'm just someone who's feeding this baby. But at the same time, and the very subtle but powerful shift is you also gain new layers to your identity, but you can't always feel that right away. Another thing is that there are lots of misconceptions about matrescence. First of all, because it's an evolving concept or it's unfolding in the public space now, You may feel like some emotions that you've experienced, some things that you felt, get dismissed. But then I would like to point out that postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression are very, very real. And they just represent a continuum on which various emotional changes can be felt by the mom. So it's of course important to pay attention to any emotional change that's bothering you, but also to know that not everything is postpartum anxiety or depression, but it's always valid to consider it, check it out, see if you need something else, because emotions are generally pointing to what we need in life. And look at the various mindset shifts that occurred as we become a mother. Now, to talk about this, I'd like you to just think about what sort of preparation you undertook to become a mom. So maybe you upskilled, maybe you attended classes, maybe you attended birthing classes, maybe you attended many planned, inadvertent or planned, spontaneous ways in which you said that, this is who I'm going to be and I'm going to be the world's most prepped mom. And yet, somehow, when the baby is in your hands and you've come back home from the hospital, everything feels like a big shift. So let's just take a look at these momentous shifts that are happening. So while we are talking about the mindset for matrescence, the first thing to really bring into our minds and spaces is that this is a circular journey. We may feel like we've had a few good days, or our child is sleeping well, or they're breastfeeding well, so we could feel like, wow, this is all like just going great for me. But the minute a new milestone comes in, or change in the sleep comes in, then we can feel really kicked back and feel like all the progress we made with the baby has been undone. I've noticed the same pattern of old learning being repeated and then being disrupted by new challenges and then coming up again happens several times as a new mom, as a toddler mom myself. And I would generally think that it's very important to embrace the notion of the fact that this is very circular, chalky, up and down road. It's not that it's happening that way or happening that way only for you. That is the case for all new parents. And when it is so nonlinear and so idiosyncratic and so personal, of course, then there's no right way. So you may happen to speak to other moms and realize that someone has just switched to formula, or they don't sleep with their baby, or they're okay with screen time for their baby, whereas you have a different opinion or perspective. In moments, I'd like you to notice and consider that there are many ways to be a mom, and different people choose different ways. And just because someone does not understand, align, support, affirm, acknowledge yours, it does not take away from the way that you have chosen, as long as that feels like the right fit for you, your partner, and the life that you have. Matrescence is many shifts all happening at once. When we talk of transitions from the point of view of psychology, we know that the life that we have just before and after are very turbulent. And it's important to note that good and bad events in life, when they're a transition, they are going to evoke that level of activation in the body for sure. It's just that we appraise the events differently. So when it is the birth of a baby, we tend to appraise them more positively, but that does not take away from the really intense amount of energy, effort being consumed, and the disruption that you may be feeling, even though this may be the world's most wanted baby for you. Now, these shifts can, of course, be in terms of your identity. So the question that you may find yourself asking is, who am I now? Right? I love my baby, but is this all my life is? You may also notice that your body feels nothing like it did. It does not move the same way. It does not fit into the same clothes. You could be very achy or tired. The same home that you lived in as a body is now changed, and it will feel different for the first couple of years after birth, even. Right? So that's another area which you'll see that there's lots of changes happening. But the bigger ones, I think, are the toll that taking care of a new little helpless baby or toddler takes is on your relationship, on your social life, and on the massive shift in priorities. So it could be, it may be something to think about since all of you are listening in. What have been some things that gotten really deep prioritized now? Take a moment to think about it and note that, maybe going to the gym was important, or maybe you had your own practice of like a music instrument that you played, or you had a weekly gathering when you met up with your friends every single week on that particular day and time. And it may be weeks to months before you're able to prioritize something like that, something that really fueled you and gave you joy, but is now completely off the chart. There could be other priorities that shift. So suddenly medical priorities for the baby become top notch. Work has to be put on hold on a day when your child is not well. And another one that gets a big hit, of course, is your relationship with your partner, because you are suddenly in a roommate phase where that the two of you are doing is taking care of the baby, and time to connect as human to human, partner to partner is very, very scarce. It's important to notice these, but it's also important to problematize these beyond the point, because a large part of this is a facet of the time. And if on both sides we have the intention to work, we will of course find ourselves back to our partners and our previous relationships in a way that time will allow. Now, something that I've seen a lot of new moms struggle with is the fact that they feel like someone has to validate their feeling. It's of course natural to want other validation, but moms feel a lot of things. A large part of it could be to do with the hormones post birth and breastfeeding. Some of it could just be to do with how tired you are. And it may be important in those moments when we are not receiving that validation from others to say to ourselves, in this moment, I notice that I'm feeling a lot of rage. I'm feeling a lot of anger, and I'm going to take care of myself even if no one else understands that. Let's take a look now to understand how birth is actually a portal that takes us into just the beginning of what it means to become a mom. So, just like with marriage, I think we've all known that when we think of marriage, we really imagine a wedding, and we imagine the world's most beautiful wedding, and then we feel like, wow. And very, very often, the reality of what a marriage involves comes into our minds a little bit later. And I think it's the same thing with birth. So, for a lot of us who've grown up watching TVs and movie shows and TVs, etc., you really think that birth is bringing the baby back from the hospital safe and sound, and now you're back home as a family of three, and that's doing it. That's just about it. But it is when we come home and we realize, and a lot of moms talk about this one moment they had when they realized that, okay, now you're, it is my house, but it does not feel the same. It is my body, but it does not feel the same. Time has no meaning. Everything is actually completely centered on a tiny little being who cannot even communicate. So birth is really just the beginning. It's not a final destination. In fact, it's just the start of a very, very long sequelae of changes that you and your partner will experience together as you become parents. And of course, yeah, birth can also be understood sometimes as a process of unfolding, and that there are very, very complex layers coming up. You could feel very, very contradictory emotion, absolutely loving your baby, but really wanting a minute away from them. You could feel like you're growing in so many directions when you sort of see that you can do something for your baby to comfort them that you did not know to do the previous day. But you can also feel real grief for how much of your life has been put on hold. These contradictory emotions are nothing but the journey that we take on when we become completely responsible, one who cannot even communicate, who cannot tell. And it's a learning every single day. It's absolutely the case. So this is the biggest thing to note. In this phase, we are put into a time warp where only you and maybe your partner and a trusted group of friends and family exist who are helping you learn what you need to navigate this transition. Sometimes gamifying it, sometimes, if you or your husband or you and, someone who's a trusted caregiver have a way of learning about the baby. So some people have a family group where they say last nap this time, last feed this time. And so people know how the child is doing. And so when they come together, it's understood. Similarly, celebrating small successes. The first time the baby slept jazz at a night, yes, that actually deserves a celebration, because those things are things you really wait for. That. So gamifying it, learning about it, sharing it with others so that your journey into motherhood does not feel alone. It's actually interesting ways of making it through this phase. Now, I think it's time to cover what it means to become a parent. We have several conversations internally. We have several conversations with our partners, our friends, our families about what would it mean to become a parent. And then very often we have some some very tender, some very idealistic goals about it. But the hodgepodge that is unleashed by the birth of the baby, it probably when all of those ideals, all of those plans, all of those hopes, values, aspirations we have for our child and us become really real for us, right? So the first, of course, is we've been talking a lot about identity. Identity questions are, of course, one, but identity on its own is very malleable. And at this point, when we are becoming a mother, it could feel like all our other selves have just disappeared. And I think at that point, what I encourage a lot of new moms to do is to also look at the new parts that have been gained. So, have you gained a capacity to sit with your child crying because you know that that's what's important to comfort them? Have you gained capacity or finally understood how to manage, or how have you reframed broken sleep as restful still because of I'm getting some sleep even in chunks? All of these things go into what is needed to be a mother, because a lot of mothering is sacrificing, right? It is sacrificing our energies, our bodies, our planning, our abilities, ability to witness and emotionally support a child, even when we are not able to do all of those things for our own times. So identity shifts are very, very inherent to matrescence. They are also the absolute integral stuff of matrescence, because we are becoming someone else for someone very precious that we brought into life. And so the second part, of course, are losses and gains. So this may be a minute to take a minute and then reflect on what is some part that you've actually lost and feel very strongly about. But also, what are some parts that we have gained that we are very proud or transformed by? And I think matrescence or becoming a parent is also about a new perspective on life itself. I've noticed not just moms, but even fathers say, on a call, if you ask a new dad, how are things now? And they say, oh, everything is about my child. And they could be looking like the world's most tired parent, but there is a glimmer, there is a smile, there is an ownership saying, we are doing this and we are trying to do this the best we can. And that's what it means to become a parent. It's not a polished, finished job. It's an unbecoming and a becoming that we want to embrace as much as we can. So changes that reshape our identity can be many. In this section, let's take a look at some and see which apply to you and how you feel about these. So a lot of the changes in matrescence are intrinsic, which means that they are happening within you, and they are implicit, which means they cannot be explained. So that's really why matrescence is sort of coming up now, I think, as a conversation sort of space as well. It's because just because these changes are sort of invisible to others does not mean that they are not happening. And if we want the best thing for our children, we want to have postpartum care that is centered on mothers. And just like these changes are invisible and they are implicit, the time at which they are becoming critical, for instance, when they're becoming difficult and they may need help to be managed, are also things we will only notice when we have a keen eye on what is happening inside the person who's the mother. Self-esteem fluctuations can be many. A lot of mothers speak of how all the special treatment they received maybe before the baby sort of shifts after the baby comes. They may also be holding in mind larger thoughts about what would happen when they return to work. Will they be, given back the same territory if they work in sales? Will you for the next promotion cycle because they took a break in between? And the truth is that these are all women who've been in employed positions. They know what they are worth over there, but suddenly you could really feel like you've been seconded or become invisible in these parts of life. And that is a very, very hard state. It's almost impossible to imagine it if you haven't been through it. The second thing is parenting and mothering is a little bit like the bamboo shoot analogy that people speak about. So when you bring a bamboo sapling home, you're supposed to water it for 8-9 months in the hope that at one fine day it will reach that critical point where it will start shooting. But up until then, 8-9 months watering that plant and believing that it's working. I feel like a lot of parenting is like that. You're putting up the bricks, you're building a foundation, but the immediate results do not really say that, right? So when you're working on feeding your baby, when you're trying to build sleep hygiene, when you introduce solids, if you want to try and feed them a certain way that respects their autonomy, the path is very, very messy and it affords us very little evidence of what's working Until one fine day when you notice your child is actually sleeping really well, or they are able to use a fork to eat their pasta or fruit, and then you feel like, okay, that's paid off. So in the process, it's of course very, very natural to have doubts, to feel like, okay, nothing is working. These moments, it may be just important to seek out someone who's able to hold a space to you, saying, today I'm really fried, this did not work. Sometimes it's just being heard by the other person that is enough to sort of shake off that disappointment or the sadness or the stress you're feeling, and you'll notice that you're willing to try again. Another big part of these changes is how interface with the societal messages that we are receiving. I would strongly ask you to consider some things that are important for you as a mom. So for me, I remember when I had my baby, it was very important to take my child out because I'm an outdoorsy person. I would love to take my child out. I also wanted to respect autonomy when it comes to food, and I was sure I wanted to sleep with my baby. I wanted to co-sleep. Now, when we are on this side of the argument, it just makes sense to hold your stance if it is informed, if it is supported by your pediatrician, and then just follow that through because it's aligning some value for you as a new mom. For me, it aligned to autonomy and nurturance. For someone else, based on the situation, of course, you have a nanny, you may have to go back to work, you may have various other limitations. But I would think it's very, very difficult to battle these societal messages that come at new moms on a case by case basis. So instead, it makes sense as a part of the time when you're planning, how you return to work, how you will introduce food, etc. What are the values that me and my partner really prioritize in raising a child? Is it that my child needs to be independent? Is it that my child needs to be eating a certain way? Is it that my child um, be, sort of kept very free, his personhood be witnessed, etc., etc. Just remembering these values makes it easier to communicate when we come upon contradictory messages and people saying this is not the way, that is not the way. No, it may help to have these arguments planned from ahead so that even if someone is not acknowledging or supporting your choice, you know why you chose them in the first place. The other two very beautiful implicit changes, I think, one is the beginning of your mom instinct. And, you may have a memory of the first time you were able to soothe your baby and they went off to sleep. The first time you were able to support them through a very, very colicky evening. The first time that you took them out and they did not cry even great time outside. These all indicate the beginning of a parental instinct where you finally can find it in you to address what's coming up with your baby one by one. This is something you're going to be using all through your life as a mom, but the beginnings of this are happening in this foundation phase. And if you've had a moment when you connected with this instinct, just make a moment of it, notice it, celebrate it, share it with everyone because that's the beginning of your own mom or dad instinct showing up. And I think the last and the very significant one is parenting being a team job. You start to notice the ways in which, titles shift and priorities get solidified and we build capacity to meet those. So if as a bunch of parents, it was very important for you to take a holiday with the child before they turn 6, you notice automatically you start building capacity for that. You start testing how the child does outside. You start testing how you can feed them outside. So capacity building for everything, all the functions of a child at your new home with the child in it as parents is also something that others may not be able to see. It's not visible to them directly, but putting the work in there and watching that transition unfold is a really process. So let's talk now a little bit about fathers. I mean, just because the concept is sense does not really at all evade us from looking into what fathers are up to in this phase. They are also going through monumental changes and learning things. So let's take a look at this phase from the point of view of fathers. So for fathers, birth can come with many things. One is that they've seen this tiny person coming sort of into form and life, and it can be very, very astonishing, very, very beautiful. And it can come with a feeling of many, many beautiful things, but also a feeling of, I am a little bit of an outsider here. I'm not sure what is the MO here. What do we do here? And that can be the beginning of helplessness. But that is a cycle that we can catch and we can edit or work with very well by putting ourselves to task, right? So we want to use the helplessness that parents feel or fathers feel initially to build into efficacy, which will only happen when we allow fathers to be fully involved, upskilled, and learning about the things that we need to be doing for the baby. And the emotional transitions that fathers go through are very, very rarely spoken about. So that's another thing, because at least for mothers, the expectation is that the mothers are experiencing these changes, but for fathers, that space is very, very rarely there. And they may also struggle with a sense of, what is happening? Am I enough to provide for my family now, which has gone from 2 to 3? And they may also really miss the warmth of their previous, very, very close and connected relationship with their partner, because their partner is now completely invested in taking care of a tiny little person. If you feel like you or your partner are experiencing anything that's on this continuum, please know that it's very, very, very common. It's common to the point of it being a stereotype at this point. It's just that it's not spoken about. So, what can we do about this? We probably just need to communicate more authentically. We probably need to sort of establish 10 minutes of judgment free listening when things start saying, I'm not going to comment or I'm not going to find a setting. I'm just going to listen to you for 10 minutes and then you can do that back for me, as a way to regroup as parents, because it's very, very important when you're dealing with something that is so dynamic. Periodic check ins, periodic conversations, very important. It's also okay to speak of the lesser said things that we feel. Fathers may very often feel like, oh, I wish I had my old life back. I could go out like this, or I could go out or work travel like that. And I really miss all of that. But they may feel like stigmatized for saying things like that, because it's not the most popular opinion to have, but it is a very real opinion to have. And sometimes when you park the judgment and you actually start talking about it, you realize that both of you have been feeling the same feeling, but with a different face. The other big challenge, I think, not just for fathers, but then other parents as a couple, is that birth and the months after birth put us in this roommate phase, which is actually what's needed in a way, because we have to suspend all our previous roles and put together all our capacities to take care of the baby. But at some point, we have to be a little intentional about also reaching out to each other as the people and partners that we knew each ourselves to be. If we let the roommate phase just persist and we stop making bits to connect, stop making plans for us which involve the child rather than the child and involving us, sort of prioritizing the couple that we were, it's going to take a toll on the connection that we had in the long run. So just taking some time again to be thoughtful, intentional, but also actionable about what plans can be made for us when we exit this roommate phase. Now, a large part of matrices, of course, is a bunch of transitions. And for transitions, we need time, space, and preparedness. In this section, we look at what that may entail. Now, when we think of birth, what are the things that we need soon after birth? Evolutionarily, if you look at this phase, very, very often, even across the animal kingdom, when people birth and are taking care of a new little one, they move into a sense of a cocoon or a shelter, because the warmth, the safety of that is very, very essential for this time. And when we are going through this nesting phase before birth, I think that's an important time for us to plan what we would be needing on the other side too, because the nesting is much easier to plan because there's no baby there. But on the other side, when you've taken the baby back home, we have to really create, protect, and sort of buffer this cocoon and the shelter that we want. Generally, mothers need a space which has a sense of emotional safety involved. So, physical safety, of course, but mainly emotional safety, because breastfeeding, milk supply, lactation, latching on directly are impacted by how emotionally grounded the mother is feeling. So, a safe space in the sense of course, physically, but also emotionally safe, which may be very, very subjective for different people. So, if society says that you have to go to your mom's place or in law's place or a separate third space where you feel like you feel best in your own home, then you prioritize that place and you plan and communicate that to your family and social support networks. And the second major thing is, how do we protect this space? So we set up some boundaries, we explain them, and we work towards maintaining them. So this may mean We limit the time that we be putting into some things that are not as important. We may have to say no to certain visitors, gatherings, or some social commitments that we know don't align with this notion of cocooning, because cocooning is actually an inwards sort of a movement. It's like sort of how we hunker over and protect something that's important. It may not be experienced as a vast expansion and an opening. But again, just a disclaimer, if you are someone who really, really loves and then loves people and wants to invite people into your own space and share your baby's presence with everyone, then so be it. There are different ways to experience this time. And like we said, there is really no right or wrong way. Now, matricide, although for a large part it can be a normative process and it can have, parts which are, like I said, you have a template to deal with it. It may be important to keep in mind that things can get really overwhelming. It's a little bit like it is a very fragile time, and one more thing, and then it can become like the straw on the camel's back sort of a situation. So here are some strategies for when things start to feel overwhelming. One of the first, of course, is making space for mixed feelings. You will really find a vacillation that is most unthinkable if you've not had a baby, because you love, hate, rage, anger, resentment, and back to love is all possible in the day or in life of a new mom. So pay attention to your mixed emotions, but also keep track of if you notice one singular concerning was showing up a lot. So, for instance, if you had just fleeting worries about something, but you notice that you're ruminating about it, you're googling about it, you're wondering if your baby has something that's that serious, and it does not feel completely proportionate or rational, just keep a tab on that. The second thing is holding space for ambivalence. Sometimes the ambivalence or the mixed feelings we feel are simply a function of how tired we are. It could also be inherent to the transformation that you're in. But knowing that there is no one feeling that will dominate these weeks and months in the beginning is a very, very um, sombering set of marker. Very often people will always speak to you, you are so happy, you have a baby, it's such a blessing to have a baby. And so it makes you feel wrong about having any ambivalent feelings about it. But it's a very, very common experience for new parents. And when there is, of course, ambivalent and mixed feelings, we do need spaces that feel safe. It's very important not to expect all of this emotional safety only from your partner, because they themselves are also dealing with this transition. So even when you're going into this phase of life, know who are your, really close people. Close don't have to be people in the same city. It could be someone who gets you but is sitting in another country. It could be a sibling that you're close to. It could be your friend at work who's also had a baby earlier. And keep these people abreast with what's happening with you, so they also know. They will also then check in. So your emotional safety does not feel burdensome as a responsibility to either you or to your partner, because you're already figuring a lot of things for answers within the system. And wherever possible, taking time, space, and giving ourselves the permission to process. So this is what happens when there is a lot happening inside home. You will have a place where all these big emotions come and they sort of narrow and get stuck because they're not getting processed. Our body is like a container for emotions, and all the emotions that we feel actually have a physical impact on our body. So anger is not something that you're feeling in your head, it's actually something you're feeling in your body. You will notice this when you see how anger makes your ears warm, right? That the anger is actually an experience for the body. And now imagine if there is no movement, there are only demands, there is no one to talk to, all of these difficult emotions come and start filling up your container, and there is no space to pour out. Now, this permission to process and time to process, of course, can happen with your own support groups, your own family, your own friends, and wherever needed, professional help is also a very, very vital and important option for you to consider. So when things get really, really demanding, first thing is dial down, look at what's essential in your day, and then consider that if I'm going this close to my limit, it's really time to do a check on what's overwhelming, what's not necessary, what's urgent, what's important, and only prioritizing the ones that are urgent. The second thing is parenthood in the initial months is on its own very, very demanding. It's not something right or wrong about how you are doing it. It's just objectively our parents quite a difficult thing. You're not meant to be doing a lot of that alone, right? Evolutionarily, again, we had a village and large joint families and communities doing the work that needed to go into taking care of a new baby. Now it's done by a very, very limited group of people. And I think no other generation of parents may have had it this isolated. And check what coping strategies you're usually applying. If you feel like, basics are out of check, like you've not slept at all in 2 nights, and you're still thinking about what there is to do, you really have to then put a stop somewhere and prioritize the sleep first, because you're not going to make big decisions when you're already that sleep deprived. It may also then be for today, the burns are only that we make sure we have eaten, we make sure we get some rest and some play with the baby about it. And if you feel that, this is not, all of these steps have been used, you've done a lot of, talking to your friends or try to talk to your partner, but you're still feeling difficult emotions, they're coming at a greater intensity and it is interfering in your bonding or connecting with the baby, please, please, please use that as an opportunity to consider therapy, because at least 30% of parents, 30% of new moms are at risk and experiencing postpartum anxiety or depression. And a word about postpartum anxiety, it's much more common than postpartum depression. Even there is a lot of talk, generally because we suddenly become in charge of the health, complete health, and we're figuring the baby's signals and we're figuring the baby's pain, and they cannot tell us. It's natural that the mother's brain is wired towards looking at signs of distress. So it's very hard to differentiate what is the normal worry you would have to respond to take care of the child versus when am I sort of going down spirals where I'm imagining terrible things happening to my child. And it is very, very distressful. It takes a lot of energy to cope with. So therapy is safe space, a great alternative to feeling like you can deal with all of this on your own. It will also help you see all the right things you've been doing in the process and how much you've been accomplishing sometimes. So when it comes to social support, of course, there are various types of support. There is instrumental support, there is emotional support. So instrumental support is when someone comes in and actually does things that help us, whereas emotional support is when someone witnesses us and supports us emotionally. Generally, what do we need a mix of both in this phase, but when it comes to social support, it's something we have to build. Unfortunately, that's not something we can take for granted anymore. And it's something that we have to build. And so it's important to sort of check in, like I said, list down some people and be in touch with the ones who get you, who you can feel, that I'm safe with people. And another very, very important thing is consider hiring professional support if it is possible for you. It could be that, like a lot of traditional systems have a rhythm of where 40 days the mothers are actually completely taken care of. A lot of doulas in the West speak of how you spend 5 days absolutely in bed after birth, then you spend 5 days just in bed but moving, and then 5 days completely limited to your room. These may sound very unrealistic, or they may sound very uh, out there, and you may not believe these or you may not consider these, but all of these were actually put out with the notion that the mother needs a lot of rest to heal at this point and to bond with the baby. So she was essentially then supposed to only do that. And other things which have to be done for the home or to support the functions of taking care of the baby could actually be given out or outsourced to someone who's professional and comes in to help. So at least those things which add to your overwhelm are under your control. Something else that comes up with social support is that the degree of support we are going to get and how usable it feels to us really depends on how we communicate. So it may be that I'm very, very stressed about the house, but I'm screaming at someone for not understanding me. You have to pause and see where the overwhelm is coming. If it feels like a priority and you want to address what's happening with your home and you think you may feel better, then do it like that. So because the overwhelm can be so mixed and so in like the in the trenches, when you are really in the trenches of this experience, sometimes just pausing and saying, what is the help I need the most? Do I need someone to take, or I can use the washroom, right? Sometimes it could just be that elementary. So check what you need and communicate that most directly. It could mean that you have to say something that you feel shame about. I'm really tired. I don't feel like taking care of the baby right now. Can someone keep her for 1 hour while I go nap? But this is how we have to get down to the trenches to actually have our needs met. And if you notice, this is exactly how babies operate, because they are not learned to sort of socially have their needs validated, right? They are intuitively connected with their needs. And I think moms also need to be a little bit more intuitively connected with their needs wherever the situation permits. Since so much of matchsins is actually about processing, may be important to hold certain powerful reframes. Now, what really are reframes? Reframes are uh, a revisioning of how we see some things, which don't really change the truth, but they change how we appraise the truth, right? So, when we think of motherhood, we may actually imagine motherhood as being a series of things that mothers do. Mothers take care of their children, mothers feed their children, mothers take them to school. Together, parents do a whole bunch of things which make the child's life full, flourishing, rich. But you know what children take away the most? They take away this quality word, the pinch of how it felt to be at home. So if you ask a child, like later in life, or when you speak to adults and you ask them what really reminds them, well, they may say, it would be those days when the light would go off and you and sit together and play Antakshari, right? So you have to remember that while there may be a lot for us to do as new parents, what we are actually trying to emulate is a certain way of being, right? Is a certain way of being which says, yes, we have many things to do, but we also want to spend time as a family unit and with the child. And to do this, the thing that we have to then learn to action out this reframe is learn that good enough is good enough, right? So if not everything is done, but the essentials are done, that's about it. Sometimes nothing helps a day with a baby or a toddler more than a good laugh or a play session with the child, because you realize how much they enjoy it, right? So really, really cultivate a notion of what does it mean or how do I want to be present to my child. The next one, and I think the fixed is a big preference for us. We may feel like we arrived at this big template of something that works with our child. So we may feel like now this works and we want to keep repeating it. But children are like so dynamic, and every time they hit a new good spot, everything will change. We will be forced to re-examine the last normal that worked. So keep your mind open for the fact that this time is going to be very, very fluid. And when things are not going well and you're feeling an urge to blame yourself, blame everybody else, sometimes it just may be okay to say, okay, this was not well handled. Does not matter how, it was just a bad day. What can we do better the next time? So shifting from the notion of it's all on me and I have to figure it, and when it's not being figured, I blame others, to saying, okay, this was a regrettable experience. What do we fix here? So time it gets handled better in a team-wise approach. So these are some powerful reframes that you may have to consider. And as closing reflections, just to reiterate that matrescence is a very, very personal, uniquely lived out experience that will probably not match anyone else's, and yet it is a universal experience that all mothers go through, even if it's not spoken about. It's a radical shift, the one that sort of really underscores changes in your identity, in your worldview, in your body, in your capacity. And it's transformative in a way that can only be lived. And in this time, because it's such a tender process, one has to reach out to their own selves with a lot of compassion and grace. And at this point, I'd like you to also think of something that you had to change in the way you see yourself or see a situation that was informed by these things. Because, of course, these changes happen automatically. But if you take some time to look at it and be a little bit more intentional, you'll probably be able to integrate it differently and feel more connected or aligned in this journey. So, what could be something that you feel like you had to change, reframe, reprioritize, realign to in your journey to becoming a mom or a new dad is something I'd like you to think about as we almost come to the end of this session. At this point, we've come to the close of this session, and I would like to thank each of the participants for their very, very thoughtful engagement in this concept. It's a very, maybe a nuanced or a vague concept, but I want to just sort of congratulate each of you on how I think you may be taking time, building intention, and sort of processing this so that you're moving ahead with your values and your journey sort of in your stride. I think sometimes, like I said, the impact of this will not be visible today or tomorrow, but it probably come through when you see your child and your new family flourishing. And I would also like to tell you again that nothing over here is prescriptive. There are no right or wrong ways. Please feel free to take these inputs and use them how you feel it aligns to you. And should you require any other resources, guidance, advice, etc., feel free to reach out to the HERA team. They're here to support you. Thank you so much for your patient listening in this session. We will see you in another one soon.